I woke up to a miracle today. Triggers stay as I find my way. No judgment to lead astray. In this peaceful state I'll stay.
Hey everyone, welcome back.
Hi.
We're going to be tackling some of your questions today
Yeah.
about ACIM lessons 6 through 10. And we know that, those first few lessons,
Right.
they're pretty easy to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
But when you get to 6 through 10,
Right.
it starts to get a little bit
It can
tricky.
It can get a little heady. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got some questions here from listeners
Great.
who are right in the thick of it with us. So you've been working with lesson 6, huh?
Yes.
And you have some questions
Definitely.
about how to really put it into practice in your life. I mean, it's one thing to read, I am upset because I see what is not there.
Right.
But it's another thing to actually live it,
Absolutely.
to actually see how our upsets really are coming from
Yeah.
mistaking illusions for reality.
Yeah.
Like one listener asked, how can I really tell the difference between what is real
Yeah.
and what's just, my own fears or ego?
That's a really great question because it's something that we all struggle with. And it really comes down to being willing to look at how we're seeing things. Like, are we coming from a place of fear? Are we coming from a place of judgment?
Okay.
Are we bringing our past hurts into the present moment?
So basically,
all of these things.
Not just about what we see out there,
Exactly.
but it's also about understanding how we're seeing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because our inner world
Right.
really shapes our perception.
Right. And that's where
forgiveness
Yeah.
becomes so important. It's not about saying what happened was okay,
Or-
condoning anything.
Right.
It's about
Yeah.
choosing to see things differently.
And the other question that we got from a listener really touches on this, which is, how do I actually use this lesson when I'm feeling all this stuff? Like anger or sadness or whatever.
It's so easy to feel overwhelmed by those emotions, right?
Yeah.
But the key is we don't have to deny them.
Okay.
We don't have to pretend they're not there.
So just be honest with yourself.
Yes, just acknowledge them without judging yourself.
Okay.
Because when we bring that awareness to them,
Yeah.
when we can just say, okay, this is how I'm feeling right now,
Yeah.
we can start to separate them from the stories that our minds are creating around them.
So it's like saying, okay, I feel this anger,
Yeah.
but I don't have to let it control me.
Yeah,
And instead of just reacting, we can take a breath
right.
and we can ask ourselves, what is this emotion showing me?
So we can sort of step back and say,
Yeah.
is this really how it is? Or am I, letting my past color things?
Exactly. And that pause,
Okay.
that willingness to just pause,
Yeah.
gives us the space to choose a different response.
And that is so,
Yeah. And to remember that we have help.
yeah,
We can ask for guidance
right. Like from that,
part of us that sees beyond the illusion.
yeah, that higher power.
Exactly.
See, so this reminds us that
And when we do that,
it's not really the thing that's happening out there that's upsetting us.
Right.
It's our interpretation of it.
exactly.
And
that's where our power lies. It's kind of empowering in a way.
absolutely, because it means we're not just victims of circumstance. We have the ability to choose our response.
And as we practice this,
And that's what it's all about. It's a practice.
right, and as we practice this, we start to embody those qualities of, trust and honesty and tolerance.
Yeah, those qualities of the teacher that the Course talks about.
Right, because those qualities help us to see through the
Yeah.
ego's tricks. like,
Exactly.
and start to see.
And to see the love that's always there.
Yeah.
It's like we're peeling away layers to reveal the truth that's underneath.
We've gotten a lot of questions from listeners about an idea from Lesson 7. You know how Lesson 7 says, my thoughts do not mean anything?
Right.
Well, a lot of people are asking, okay, if my thoughts don't mean anything, then why do they seem to have such a big impact on how I feel?
Yeah, I can see why that would be confusing.
Right.
Because on the one hand, we're being told our thoughts are meaningless.
Yeah.
And yet we all know how much our thoughts
Yeah.
seem to affect us.
Right.
So it does feel like a contradiction.
It really does.
Yeah. But I think it's helpful to remember
Okay.
what the Course is really getting at here.
Okay.
It's not saying that our thoughts are literally meaningless, like they don't exist, but that they don't have the kind of ultimate reality that we tend to give them.
Okay.
They only have the power that we give them
Oh.
by believing in them.
I see.
It's like we're creating our own personal movie in our minds, and we get so caught up in the story,
Yeah.
the drama, the emotions,
Right.
that we forget it's all just a projection.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
Yeah, it's like we get so invested in the movie
Yeah.
that we forget we're the one who are creating it.
Exactly.
We think it's real.
Yeah, and the feelings we have
Right.
while we're watching this movie,
Right.
they feel real too.
They do.
But ultimately, we know it's not real in the same way
Yeah.
that the physical world is. The Course is saying that the world we experience through our thoughts is kind of like that movie.
Okay, so it's not about
Yeah.
trying to stop thinking.
Right.
It's more about changing how
Exactly.
we relate to our thoughts.
Exactly.
Lesson 7 also says something about how we're seeing only the past.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that we tend to hold on to past judgments, old hurts, grievances, and we let those things color our present moment experience. The ego loves these thoughts because they reinforce this idea of separation.
Right.
It makes us feel guilty,
Yeah.
afraid, angry,
Right.
and it wants us to believe that our thoughts are reality.
So how do we get out of this cycle?
The Course gives us some tools.
Okay.
It starts with self-observation,
Okay.
becoming aware of our thoughts as they come up, but without judging them.
Okay, what happens next?
Well, once you're aware of your thoughts, you can start to question them.
Question them.
Yeah, ask yourself,
Okay.
is this thought really true? What evidence do I have to support it?
Wow. I never thought of it that way.
It's a simple practice,
Yeah.
but it can be really powerful.
A lot of you have been asking about Lesson 8. So many of you wrote in with this question. If our minds are stuck in the past, how do we see anything the way it is right now?
Well, it's not that we're constantly reliving the past like on repeat.
Right.
It's more that we see the present through the filter of our past experiences.
I see.
Especially the thoughts and beliefs that we formed because of those past experiences.
So it's not the past itself that's the issue, but how we're carrying it with us, like baggage.
I can like that analogy. Think of a friend who always expects to be criticized. Even a neutral comment might upset them because their past experiences have shaped their perception, you see?
That makes sense. Another question that came up a lot was, if I'm upset because of something that happened, then isn't that the real reason I'm upset?
Let's say your friend is upset because someone canceled plans.
Okay.
It seems like the cancellation is the cause, right?
Right.
But of course, in Miracles suggests we go a little deeper.
Okay.
Their upset might come from a deeper fear of abandonment based on past experiences. And this cancellation just triggered it.
So it's like what we see on the surface is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole lot more going on underneath.
Exactly. We don't always know the real cause of our upset because we haven't looked at the thoughts and beliefs that are driving our reactions.
So we're almost like puppets being controlled by our past without even realizing it.
Sort of. That's why A Course in Miracles is all about self-awareness and being honest with yourself.
But not in a judgmental way, right?
No, not at all. It's about being willing to look inward and really observe your thoughts and feelings.
Without pushing them away.
Yes.
But how do we even begin to figure out what those hidden reasons are for our upset? It all seems a bit overwhelming.
It can be, for sure. It all starts with sincerely wanting to understand yourself better.
Okay.
Be curious about what's going on beneath the surface, you know?
Lesson 8 talks about asking the Holy Spirit for help. How does that fit into all of this? How can the Holy Spirit help us see past these distortions?
Well, think of it this way. Imagine you're in a dark room and you keep bumping into furniture.
I've been there.
The Holy Spirit is like turning on the light. It helps you see what's actually there.
I get it. So it's not about ignoring our thoughts and feelings, but actually shedding light on them.
Yes, exactly. The Holy Spirit helps us see things in a new way. It shows us the fears and beliefs that are driving our reactions.
Okay, I've got one more question that kept popping up. A Course in Miracles says that we don't see anything as it actually is. that a little dramatic?
It does sound that way at first. But think about it. We're always filtering our experiences through our past conditioning. So we're not really seeing the world as it is, we're seeing it as we are.
So we're creating our own reality based on our past. Whoa, that's a lot of responsibility.
It is a big responsibility, but it's also really empowering, you know? Once we realize we're not seeing things clearly, we can start to question our perceptions.
So instead of blaming other people or our circumstances for how we feel, we can start to look inside.
Exactly. A Course in Miracles talks about how important forgiveness is for seeing clearly. It's like when we hold on to anger and hurt, we're looking through a dirty window.
Forgiveness is like cleaning the window so we can see better.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about forgiving other people.
Oh, right.
It's about forgiving ourselves, too. We often carry so much guilt and shame from the past, and that clouds our vision just as much as anything else.
Forgiveness sounds like a huge undertaking. Where do we even start?
Well, I think it starts with being willing to let go of the stories we tell ourselves about the past. You know, the stories where we're the victim or the villain or even the hero sometimes.
I see.
Those stories just keep us stuck in the same old patterns of thought.
So it's not about saying what happened was okay or pretending it didn't hurt, but choosing to see it in a new light.
Right, it's realizing that holding on to that resentment hurts us more than anyone else.
I see.
It keeps us trapped in the past, and it stops us from experiencing the peace and joy of right now.
Earlier we were saying that our past shapes how we see things, which can lead to upset. How does all of this connect back to Lesson 8 and the idea that our minds are preoccupied with the past?
Well, when we're stuck in those past thoughts, all those regrets and fears and judgments, we're not really present in this moment.
I see.
We can't experience the beauty of what's happening right now because we're too busy replaying the past or worrying about the future.
It's like we're watching a movie that we created ourselves. A movie based on our past experiences, but we think it's real life.
Exactly. And the problem is that movie is usually full of drama and conflict and pain. Not a very fun movie to watch.
So how do we stop watching that movie and start living in the now? How do we get free from all those thoughts about the past?
Well, A Course in Miracles suggests that mindfulness can be a really helpful tool for becoming more aware of the present moment.
What exactly is mindfulness?
It's all about paying attention to your thoughts and feelings without judging them, just noticing them as they come and go.
So instead of getting carried away by our thoughts and emotions, we just observe them.
Right, you become more like an observer watching the clouds float by without getting attached to any particular one.
We realize that our thoughts are just thoughts. They don't necessarily reflect reality.
And we have the power to choose which thoughts we want to focus on and which ones we want to let go of.
We're diving into some listener questions surrounding that thought-provoking statement in Lesson 9. I perceive nothing as it is now.
It can be a tough one to wrap your head around, right?
Absolutely, especially when two questions come up, and rightfully so. How does this idea of not seeing things as they are connect to forgiveness?
Yeah.
And if we're really walking around misinterpreting everything, what can we actually trust?
It is kind of unsettling when you think about it that way.
Well, let's break it down. So this lesson is basically saying our perceptions, what we think we're seeing, it's not the full picture.
Yeah, it's more like we're looking at the world through a really dirty window. All these past experiences, the judgments, all the stories we tell ourselves, they distort everything.
So it's like we're holding the past up against everything and calling that seeing.
Exactly. Instead of seeing things fresh, in the present moment.
So where does forgiveness fit into all of this?
Well, forgiveness becomes the key to actually cleaning that window.
Oh, I see. So it's less about condoning someone's actions and more about...
It's about recognizing that what we're often reacting to isn't really them. It's our own stuff, our own unhealed wounds, or projecting all of that onto the other person.
Okay, so how does that actually play out in real life?
Let's say someone cuts you off in traffic. Your immediate reaction might be anger. You label them as a jerk, right?
Right, road rage in action.
But if you look closely, that anger might stem from feeling a lack of control. Or maybe a past experience where you were hurt by someone else's reckless behavior.
So in that moment, forgiveness would be about...
It would be about acknowledging, hey, this isn't really about this other driver, it's about me, my stuff.
And healing that stuff rather than trying to control the other driver.
Precisely.
It sounds like a pretty profound shift in perspective.
It is. It allows us to see the situation with more compassion and understanding. And that opens the door to healing.
But then how do we know what to trust? I mean, if our perceptions are so unreliable, what's our anchor?
That's where connecting with our inner guide comes in. You know, that part of us that A Course in Miracles calls the Holy Spirit.
Right, that voice of intuition and wisdom.
It's that inner compass that can help us navigate through all the noise and distortion of our ego. It points us toward truth.
So it's like having a built-in GPS, but for our spiritual journey.
You could say that it helps us differentiate between the ego's voice, which is fear-based, and the Holy Spirit's voice, which is rooted in love.
But those voices, they can sound pretty similar sometimes, right?
They can. That's why developing that inner discernment, that ability to distinguish between them, is so crucial.
So it's about paying attention to our thoughts and feelings and asking ourselves,
Where is this coming from? Is this thought or feeling leading me toward peace? Or is it taking me down a path of fear and judgment?
so we can trust those feelings of peace and love.
Yes, those are the signposts that we're on the right track, that we're aligned with our inner guide.
Even when our physical senses might be telling us something different.
Even then, it's a process of learning to trust that inner knowing above all else. It's a journey of cultivating faith in something beyond our limited perception. It's about practice, right? Like we train in a gym.
Yeah, it's like building those spiritual muscles.
Exactly. And lesson 9 gives us some tools for that.
It really encourages us to question everything we see.
Yeah, to kind of hit that pause button.
Just accepting things at face value
You know, like that exercise where we look at a chair or a pen.
and say, I do not see this as it is now,
It reminds us that our perception is always limited.
and that we're probably missing part of the picture.
Exactly. And we need to apply that to everything, not just objects.
Relationships, experiences, our own thoughts even.
All of it. Asking ourselves, is this really true?
Or am I just making up a story here?
Right, because often it's just a story.
But doesn't that make you doubt everything? Like, what if we go too far?
It's not about becoming cynical.
Okay.
It's about humility, recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
So we're open to new perspectives, to seeing things differently.
Yes, and as we practice this, we start to experience more inner freedom
Freedom from.
those limiting beliefs, from the need to be right all the time.
Focusing on lesson 10, my thoughts do not mean anything. It's a big one.
It really is.
And it's easy to just read it, but to actually grasp it,
Right.
to really live it, it's a whole other thing.
It is. It's challenging.
The first question is about breaking free from self-attack, that voice in your head,
Yeah, the inner critic. So many people deal with that.
It can be brutal,
Yeah.
and the listener wants to know how to stop it.
Well, the first step is just noticing it's there. Awareness.
Becoming aware of it, huh?
Yeah, bringing it out into the open, shine a light on it.
Right, but that can be scary, can't it?
It can be. It's not always pretty.
To see those thoughts,
Yeah, but you have to see them to deal with them.
So you see them, then what?
Then you start to question them.
Which brings us back to lesson 10. If thoughts don't actually mean anything, then maybe those attacks don't either.
That's the idea. They're just noise, empty noise.
You don't have to listen to them.
Right.
You have a choice.
We always have a choice.
You can choose to listen to the ego,
That negative voice.
or you can choose something else. Love, forgiveness.
That's a powerful thought. These beliefs, these fears, they hold us back.
And the key to getting out is forgiveness, recognizing we all make mistakes.
It's not about condoning those mistakes.
Right.
It's about understanding they don't define us. There's another question that ties into lesson 10
Yeah,
and how thoughts, if they're meaningless,
right.
can still make us feel so bad.
It seems like a contradiction,
A paradox. It is, but the ego's good at that kind of thing.
creating illusions.
Yes, illusions of guilt and fear, making them feel so real. Guilt, especially.
What does it do?
It keeps us trapped.
How?
It tells us we deserve to suffer
Because we messed up.
because we're not good enough.
It's like we're holding on to the pain,
We are
afraid to let go.
afraid of what might happen if we do.
What is it we're afraid of?
Punishment, retribution.
So we punish ourselves,
In a way, yes.
trying to preempt some external judgment.
Trying to control the situation.
But what if that judgment doesn't exist?
That's the thing.
What if it's just our own guilt projecting outward?
That's where lesson 10 comes in.
It's a different way of looking at things.
A radical shift in perspective.
Our thoughts don't mean anything.
So the guilt and fear don't either.
Guilt leads to fear,
Fear leads to attack.
and the attack creates more guilt.
A vicious cycle.
So all this self-judgment, It's coming from guilt and fear.
Which are based on thoughts.
Thoughts that don't mean anything.
These lessons are really about helping us to shift our perception.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy process,
No, it's not.
but it's a journey.
And it's worth it. So thank you for joining us today. And
Thanks for the great questions.
yeah, we really appreciate
Yeah.
your questions.
Keep them coming.
And we hope that this has been helpful.
You're doing great.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
I